What on earth are we singing? That's what we're talking about today. I just read a fascinating article that's coming out in Worship Leader magazine, written by the Daniel Thornton, the author, and it was so fascinating to me. I thought we got to have this guy on a video chat and just talk about this whole conversation of all the songs that we're singing in our churches, the high ones that take us way above our vocal ranges, the low ones, all of the stuff about the key. The fascinating thing about this is I fed Daniel tons of data straight from the bowels of the PraiseCharts database, handed it all over to him, and he spent a couple of weeks processing it all, digesting it, analyzing it, and then creating this fascinating article that literally just came out. Maybe you're coming to this link because you read that article and you want to have a conversation. It stirred up some thoughts in you. That's how I felt. And so I'm going to have right now a live conversation with the Daniel himself. We're going to talk about his article. We're going to look at PraiseCharts. We're going to look at the KeyFinder, look at all the resources that we've created to try to help worship leaders grapple with this question of trying to sing more songs that match your vocal range, the congregational vocal ranges that still sound great. So it's going to be a fascinating conversation. Here we go. All right, Daniel, you got me all stirred up. I'm just like raring to go. I've been so itching to have a conversation about this topic. And here you go. Take our data and write such a fascinating article full of depth. I'm so excited. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, I couldn't have written the article without the data. And it's data that is unique in many ways to PraiseCharts. And so I'm really grateful that you're capturing something that I haven't seen elsewhere.
Yes.
And that allows us to have that conversation. Otherwise, we couldn't have it. So, it's not that, there's not other places out there that can give you different keys for songs, but the particular way that you approach that with the voice finder and showing the range on a keyboard, very visual.
Yes.
And the idea that the individual can adjust their range and try and work out something that works for them or works for their congregation. Brilliant.
Yes.
So thanks for the data.
Well, this is really cool because what we've done is you've written the article, we fed you the data, you wrote the article, and now this is almost like, what do you call it? Oh, now I'm forgetting the word. I'm going to have to edit this out. But what's it called?
Debrief.
This is almost like augmented reality to an article. You write the article, but then we get to flesh it out here in this video. So really excited to have this conversation. And it is something so many worship leaders are wrestling with because we're inundated with incredible songs of worship. But the reality is those songs are written and performed by highly, professional voices. You got the Phil Wickham, the Chris Tomlin, the Brandon Lake. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. We love all of their songs, but it's really hard to reach into some of those ranges. And so then we're caught with I have this song, but I need it in a different key, or I don't know if it even fits my vocal range. All those questions. What are some of the questions you have been hearing that has stirred up your passion to write this whole article and delve into this?
Yeah. I think in that article, I ask almost more questions than I answer.
I know. Yes, you do.
But it's an ongoing thing, right? It's not a static issue that we're dealing with. It's a progressive issue that's affected by so many different factors. It's affected by the size of the church. It's affected by the musicianship. It's affected by the training of the vocals. It's affected by the sort of church that, is it a church that wants someone screaming at the top of their lungs, or is it a church that wants a different kind of vocal tone? I mean, there's just so many factors that are at play. And so I'm just kind of glad to open up that conversation so that people are asking the right questions.
Yeah. Well, something we're trying to do in PraiseCharts is raise the bar of musicianship in churches. And I just always feel so much like churches need worship leaders who are leaders and musicians and understand it's like you need to know more than just three chords on a guitar in order to really delve into the depths of some of these wrestles and challenges. But there are answers, there are tools, there are resources, there are ways of thinking about this that as we raise the bar of your level of musicianship, understanding like the keys, ranges, types of voices, types of context, all of those kind of things. So I'm hoping as you who are listening to this conversation that we're having here, you're going to come out of that probably with some more questions than you had in the beginning, but hopefully also some more answers. So diving right in, one of the things I wanted to talk about that just kind of sets the context for a lot of this is how music has shifted. Our digestion of music has shifted even over the last 1,000 years, or even a couple hundred years, 100 years. I mean, as soon as technology came along, the whole industry of music dramatically shifted as soon as we had that capability of recording something. Because then, I mean, back in the day, they had to have a harpsichord in the living room. That's how they were going to, entertain the guests, right? There was no pressing play. Nothing like that. You needed a live musician. And then in churches, I mean, there was no tracks to listen to. There was no, have you heard it on? I mean, it's just, you just remember it from having heard it. And the only way to engage with the song is to sing it live once again. There was no listening to non-live music. I just feel like that is profound to think about how recent it is that technology has impacted our expectations and our consumption of music. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's no question that it has. One of the interesting things for me about that is that the divorce of musical sound from musician. So we can have music without actually the creators or the performers of it. And that, of course, just didn't exist before recordings. And so what does that actually do with our engagement with music? Because it's no longer with a person. It used to always be with a person. There was a person producing that music. And now it's actually with a sound that's separate from that person. So I think that that has made music into much more of a commodity rather than a communication, and far less interactive, because we don't have the performer in front of us that we somehow need to connect with, or who's trying to connect with us. We've got a sound.
Yeah, totally. I feel like this is exactly what propels the heartbeat and vision of PraiseCharts. Then, in the sense, I'm in a constant wrestle with the industry that's putting out music it's almost like on another platform. It's music that largely is made for listening to. I mean, it's great that we can also sing it, but a lot of times when musicians are making music, they're thinking, well, how many times are people going to click play on Spotify or Apple or whatever and crawl up the streams, or on YouTube, or all of that kind of passive thing. And PraiseCharts is coming in and saying, we want to put people on the platform with real instruments, real people, real voices. And then comes this friction, because there's this feeling of, well, I heard it one way, but I can't personally make it sound like that. I can't sing that high. I don't know those chords. I can't remember that melody. Can't remember all those. I mean, there's all the wrestle that comes along with it. But I'm just telling you, Daniel, that we're committed day after day after day. The reason why we do PraiseCharts is to put people on the platform of stages and give them a personal connection to this experience of congregational worship. I think that's so important. So that's why I'm kind of fascinated by this topic.
Yeah, it's wonderful that you do that, and really appreciate the work that you do in that space. I know as a young, growing up in an independent Pentecostal charismatic church, with a lot of those songs that were coming out in the 70s, This Is the Day. I mean, you did only need three chords, and
Right.
you only needed to remember a few lines of lyrics, and
Yeah.
and someone just showed you how it went on the guitar or the piano, and that was the sum of it. But the genre of contemporary Christian worship has progressively evolved, and it's gotten progressively more complicated specifically in certain ways. So, for example, the lyrics, there's just so many more lyrics than there traditionally were in those early songs. Certainly the chords have become not ridiculously, I mean, we're still not using chromatic chords or but it's certainly more complicated than it was 40 years ago, and certainly the range of songs has substantially increased over that time as well. So there's certain factors that are getting more complicated, and those require a different level of musicianship, a different level perhaps of even of needing charts. I mean, I grew up having to learn the songs off by heart, and honestly, I just don't use charts because I tuck it into my memory. But I know that's not everyone, and charts can be tremendously useful for those who haven't perhaps developed those skills yet, or who are using that to then tuck it all away in their memory. And
well, honestly, I mean, I might be biased, but I feel like the best scenario are those who know both how to play from their heart and by ear, and also understand what's going on musically, that have a level of musicianship. And not to elevate myself, but that happens to be the background through which I'm coming to this, because I'm not awesome at either, but I'm pretty good at both. I can certainly sit down at a piano and lead people in worship and not have the music. I probably need the lyrics in front of me, but can pretty much do it by music. But every time, like I am even leading worship this Sunday, and it's always a wrestle for me, and I'm looking at the songs and thinking about, oh, did I lose you? Okay, come back. How did that happen? No problem. We can just take that out and put that back in.
Yeah.
So now I gotta. I don't know what happened there. Anyways, I gotta try to figure out how I can get back into that. I was just in a stream, so
I think what I would say is that I have a similar kind of background. I had classical training at the conservatorium. I learned how to read music. I learned, a high level of musicianship. But equally, I was in an environment where most people were self-taught, and there was a lot of spontaneous and improvisation, and so I actually really appreciate the gifts that both of those aspects of musicianship give you. So I'm like you. I would encourage people to have the skills and on both of those sides.
Well, let's take some time now, because even for people listening in on this talk, I'm hoping that they will feel like their sense of musical intelligence will even raise as we're going to look at some songs, we're going to look at some tools we even have in PraiseCharts, and talk about the very article that you had. So, and I'm so grateful to Worship Leader Magazine, who is hosting this article, and they have you on as a worship kind of data analyst on a long-term basis. So I find that so fascinating. Why don't we dig in a little bit and just talk about, like, what is the data actually saying? Can you tell me, what did you actually find when you started to look at the numbers and all the songs and the keys and the comparisons? Tell me about some things that you found.
Yeah. Well, it was fascinating. I think I was surprised that the most recorded key was D flat major.
Fascinating.
I just think, what an obscure key to decide that that's the best key to record in. But because, of course, no songs were downloaded in D flat major. So no one wants to read a chart in D flat major.
That's right.
So especially when it's just so close to C or D, just a
Right.
little shift, and we can read this thing and play it easily.
Yes.
So that was fascinating to me. It was also fascinating to me that just the sharp keys were actually not represented anywhere near as much as the flat keys. So there was
Right.
there was no songs in C sharp or F sharp or whatever, but all the enharmonic equivalents were there, and it just got me
Yeah.
thinking: why do people love flat keys?
Right.
I
Right.
mean, guitarists don't like flat keys.
Right. It's almost like there's two worlds of preference, There's the pianists and maybe the brass and wind. They're into the flat world, but certainly the modern rhythm section would be more into the sharp world. So for sure.
Yeah, and there's lots of artists who are guitar, driven. Like
Yeah.
whether it's Phil Wickham or, I mean, there's a bunch out of there, Chris Tomlin, or some of the Hillsong guys, and yet it's not like suddenly we had a whole bunch of E major, A major keys from them either. So yeah, I
Yes.
mean that was fascinating.
For sure. Well, I'm just looking actually at a song, and I'll flip over to this song right now because this has been one of the biggest current songs that we're singing all over the world right now is actually Holy Forever. And I just noticed, I wasn't even planning for this, but since you mentioned about D flat, it is originally written in D flat. So there you go. I mean, it's Chris Tomlin's key. I remember probably 15 years ago, he wrote How Great Is Our God in D flat. I don't know how many people out there sing How Great Is Our God in D flat. I certainly don't. However, I have sung that song led by Chris Tomlin in a stadium, and I'm sure he was doing it in D flat, and somehow I felt like, well, I'm having no problem singing this right now. I mean, the church is erupting in passionate, powerful worship. So there's something to that, but
There
yeah,
is, and I think that's one of the observations I make, that when you're recording these in a live, especially in a very large mega church or in a conference type context, the sheer volume of music and the volume of people does allow you to push your range in a way that just doesn't sound that great early on a Sunday morning in a small
yes.
church congregation.
Yes, that totally. I mean, certainly there's that. There's also the way the song is structured and what the song is doing. Is it an upbeat tempo, a song that's somehow calling your whole body to sort of stand and rise and your lungs align and and all of that, versus sitting in a couch in a soft, song. You can't sing in the same kind of vocal range. So that makes a huge difference. It's not just what key is the song in, but also what physical setting am I in, what sound dynamic I'm in. That's going to impact the range that I can reach.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's something in when you do have a lot of people and when you do have a lot of musical resources that are surrounding your voice, it's almost like you need it to be in a range that cuts through. Otherwise, it can just be lost. If you were
Yes.
singing sort of down in a very comfortable range in the midst of a large musical ensemble, you wouldn't be heard. So
Yeah.
so actually, some of that's about where it needs to be in a mix.
Yes. Yes. Well, in the article, and I actually have a copy of the article. If some of you are looking for it, you can find it on in Worship Leader magazine. Hopefully, you subscribe to this. But not too long down in it, just under the introduction, you made reference to this vocal range finder that you found on PraiseCharts, and I definitely had a lot of investment into thinking about this and creating it, and there are numerous versions that are out there. In fact, I can just show this to you. If you look on most songs in PraiseCharts, you'll find this vocal range KeyFinder. Can I just take a few minutes to just describe how it works, and then you can tell me some of
Please.
the things that you discovered about it. But the different elements are, you can set your vocal range up and down right here. So this is based on my vocal range. The lowest note that I'm comfortable singing is an A3, which is just a little bit below middle C. And the highest note actually typically is more like a D, maybe I could reach up to a D flat, but let's say it's a D. So when I set my vocal range as that, in our database, we've inputted what the lowest note and the highest note of the song Holy Forever is when it's in the key of D flat. So then you could see that if the song is in the key of D flat, most of the time I'm going to be singing in this green zone, but I'm going to be forced to hit the yellow and the red zone. The red zone is going to really cause my voice to strain. So that's what this, but then you can see on the top, I'm able to tell the keys that are in yellow and then ultimately in green would be that's the song where, or that's the key where all of the notes would match my personal vocal range. So that's kind of what that is saying, and this can be interactive to anybody using PraiseCharts. You can go to this, and once you set your own personal vocal range, any song that you bring up, it's going to know what your vocal range is, and you will quite quickly be able to see what keys are going to be within the range. We made a yellow zone as well, which is kind of like, I could probably hit a G, or I could probably hit, a D flat if I really needed to strain for it. If I really needed to sing the song in B flat, that would be okay. But A seems to be the best for me. So that's the nature of how the key range computes together the vocal range of the song with your personal vocal range, looking for the crisscross of that and finding that optimal matching point.
Yeah, which is brilliant. Just the ease, the visual representation there. It's so helpful. I had a worship leader just the other week. She doesn't have some of the musicianship needed to know what key things should be in, and she said, "Oh, what key should we do this song in?" And I could work that out for her on the spot because of my skill. But I actually said to her, you really should go to PraiseCharts and put in your range. And because the fact is, a lot of singers don't even know their range. Right. And so, the thing is, there's so many online tools that can quickly determine what your range is. So it's such an easy thing these days to find out. Or, of course, you can just sit with a musician and kind of play the notes down and see what's comfortable for you.
Yeah.
You've shown a great example there where you found the key, you found a song, you found a key for Holy Forever that would work for your range. But it's got quite a large range, that song. It's a perfect 11th. It's an octave and a perfect fourth.
Yes.
So that's a big range. And in fact, that was the most popular range from among the top 50 songs.
Fascinating.
And that's a large range.
Yes.
And that fascinated me because when I looked a bit more carefully, I realized that more than 50% of the songs had that kind of range or larger. Now, if you put in your range that you had right there and did it on Shane and Shane's, what is it? What was that song that had 2-octave?
Well, maybe I'll just look for it as you're thinking of it. Can you think of it, though?
That had a 2-octave. You've Already Won.
Yes.
So it has a 2-octave range. And
yes.
so you can't actually put that in a key that works completely for your vocal.
Yes. It's all in red. Hence, it's all in red. Yeah,
that's right. So what does a worship leader do with a song like that? Mm-hmm. And I think there are a few solutions. People, I've often seen a shift between sort of working with a female worship leader and a male worship leader, so that the female can sing perhaps some of the really low sections that they're still comfortable with, and then the guy can take over in the chorus, which is too high for the female voice. So some of that kind of co-leading can work. Sometimes it's a matter of shifting the whole song, the whole section, like a chorus or a bridge that goes way up into the sky somewhere, down a whole octave, or maybe it's to sing a harmony. There are lots of creative ways, but it occurs to me that this is not the exception. This is actually quite typical of at least half the songs we're singing.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of goes to show that to some level we like to mimic when we are leading worship, when we're picking songs, we want to sound somewhat like the recording. I mean, everyone sort of feels like, I want to sound professional, want to try to mimic that. But then there is the reality that you have to know yourself, you have to know the song, and then ultimately sing the song, lead the song as though it's your own song. So your goal when when you're leading, you've already won. If you're deciding to lead that song, you need to lead it like you wrote it, like you own it, like it's your song, right? And
Yeah.
certainly you can't just go and change the melody dramatically, but there is some level of preparation to go, if I am going to do this song, what am I going to do? What are the choices at my disposal? Can I lower the octave in a certain section? Can I get someone else to back me up in a certain section? I don't know, various things. That can I shift the key to get it as close as possible? There's a lot of things that you can have in your tool belt. Ultimately, you're not there just to remember. You're not there to represent Shane and Shane on a Sunday morning. You're there to be you, the worship leader, leading your real people. And the people that you're leading the song to, they're like, they don't even know who Shane and Shane is. They've never heard. They don't care. They just care about that moment. And are they engaging in worship with a worship leader who has a reasonable sense of confidence and boldness and presence to be able to create ease and all of those sort of social musical dynamics to lead in worship.
Yeah, yeah, they're great thoughts.
Yep.
It's my observation is that it was quite popular in a whole season of contemporary songwriting to jump up the octave for a
Right.
chorus, to sort of do things down, or maybe a bridge that starts down the octave and then just jumps up the octave. And so suddenly a song that might normally have perhaps a reasonable range or a very singable range suddenly becomes is quite a stretch. And of course, that really works on a recording because there's a whole dynamic change. There's a
Yes.
lift in the song. But there are other ways to create that lift. There are musical ways to create that lift. There are both dynamic and textural,
Yep.
the increase in
Yep.
instrumentation.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we do need to be, as worship leaders, a bit creative. As you say, we need to make it work for us and for our
Yep.
congregations, and that might mean thinking a little bit outside the box.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about an example. I don't know if you know the song Made for More by Josh Baldwin, but that's a song that I've come to love, and it does have that octave shift in it. It's beautiful how it works, but I can't reach that octave shift. So I have adapted the song when I lead it, and I don't do the octave shift, but then I key it in the middle, so that it's not, I'm not way down low where Josh actually starts. I'm not way up high where I can't reach, and those are options that we as musicians and worship leaders can bring to the table to think, I know that I want to lead the song with confidence in a way that matches my voice. Otherwise, I need to find somebody else to lead it, and that's perhaps an option as well. But if I'm going to lead it, I need to know who I am, right? So.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a Cornerstone was a great example of that back in the
Hmm.
day, and a bunch of the Hillsong guys used to do that sort of thing, jump up the octave. I'm trying to think of some of the others that might be there, but the other thing that I've noticed recently, which is really interesting, is a song like "Goodbye Yesterday," where you do have a lead female and lead male vocal, but the
Yeah.
female vocal, the female melody of "Again and Again and Again," that little
Yeah.
part, the female melody is actually quite different. It's just different to the male
Yeah.
vocal altogether. And I think, okay, well, that's someone thinking outside the box. They're not just trying to move it up or down an octave. They're actually just going, well, how could I make a melody that works for me, in my range?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I have an interesting question. This may stir some thoughts or opinions from those of you listening in. Is how important is the congregational vocal range to the selecting of what key I'm singing a song in? Do I need to stay between the two C's? Like most people think congregations typically are low C to high C, maybe give or take a couple notes. What's your opinion about that?
I actually did portion of my PhD research covering this very question. So feel free to read a PhD dissertation if you want to know the details. But the summary was that I could not find an average range for a congregation. When I got people to sing a song of their choice without any accompaniment, the range was so diverse that there is no way you could have picked songs that worked for everyone. It's going to, maybe you're hoping that it works for most, but I wasn't even truly convinced, at least from my research, that there was a most suitable key for the whole congregation, which then begs the question, do we just make it so that it works for the worship leader?
Yes.
Or, do we try and keep it in somewhere in that maybe C4, C5 range?
That's the question. I mean, that's the question I'm asking. I have an opinion. I'm sure everyone listening in has their opinions, but I will tell you what my opinion is. As I have seen, just as you have said, there seems to be no agreement that this is what the ultimate congregational range is. There's such a diversity. And even if you look at the personality of a congregation, it's 250 random people, and some have a low, some are high, some are, very small range, some have a wide range. So it's not like that congregation. Exactly. There's just, and then as I have observed, the greatest worship leaders like, Chris Tomlin and Phil Wickham and Brandon Lake, I don't see them keying their songs down into this C to C range. And I certainly do not observe them not having a congregational response. I mean, I've been in, a church setting where Brandon Lake and Ben Hastings and Phil Wickham have been leading, and you almost can't hear the worship leader singing because the congregation is singing so loud. So that's not the requirement. It leads me to think that it's not so selfish to say the most important thing is that you key the song to a vocal range that the worship leader can sink right into and lead with confidence and boldness, and the church is just going to find a way to follow. Because, I mean, they don't need to sing the melody. They can just slip off into some harmony. They can quieten down. They can, shout it out. They can talk. There's so many different ways that they can just mix into the 1,000 voices or 100 or 500 that are around them. But the person who is on a microphone, just like I'm on this microphone right now, you want to be like in the pocket and on the note, and in tune and not straining. So that's my opinion. What do you think about that?
I think that's I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Maybe because I've observed the same thing. I'm just noticing that I have frozen.
Oh, it's all right. I can still hear you. So
we're back.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I've noticed the same thing. And
oh, that's all right. Just call back. No problem at all. We're all good. Keep going. You've noticed the same things. That's where you want to start.
Yep. I've noticed the same thing. And my observation is that congregations, in the context that I'm in, they do want to worship. Now,
Yes.
and that means most of the time that they will want to sing with you, and they'll do that in any way that they can. But even I think we've got to be careful not to limit people's worship to just when we see them singing along with us on a Sunday morning, because that engagement with a song doesn't necessarily have to be that their voice is singing. They can be engaging with that song in contemplation of those lyrics. They can be engaging with it bodily in physical worship to God. Now, I love singing. I would encourage every Christian to be singing their worship, but I just think we don't want to limit worship such that if not everyone in the congregation is singing, we've somehow failed to have them worship.
Truly, I do totally agree with you, and I need to remember that sometimes as a worship leader, because like anyone, I'm either not looking at the congregation because I'm too afraid to see if they are or not singing. I'm just being honest. I'm staring into the lights or closing my eyes or anything. Lord, please, I hope they're following me. But then if I do see them, and some of them might be standing, or they might just have their head bowed, or this is how I am when I'm being led in worship. I'm not always singing, and sometimes I'm just listening. I'm just soaking in. I'm just breathing in the space that's around me. There are so many different variety of ways of responding, and even sometimes that might be, okay, this song is outside of my vocal range. I am in the congregation. I can't seem to sing this song, but does that mean like I'm out of it, or I shouldn't even be here? It's just, well, hey, the whole service isn't just designed just for you. So stay with it, stay engaged, be present. There's no shame in not singing a couple of notes, or I mean, there's so many different things that you can do, but it's good as a good reminder for that.
Yeah, we're at the moment. My wife and I are working in a pioneer work. The church is in a school hall. It's very limited musical resources, and the sound bounces everywhere, as school halls do, and so you really want to approach the congregation with a genuine sense of where you are and what you're trying to achieve in that moment and in that context.
Yes.
And I think as worship leaders, just keep loving the people that are there. Even the person who comes in and stands at the back and folds their arms and looks grumpy, the fact is that they still came.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So, the fact that they're there means that God can meet them through that worship. And I just think, instead of getting, upset with the congregation, or whipping them to come on, sing, that instead we can just be the inspiration and light, and genuinely connect with God and do what we can to draw others with us along that journey.
Right on. Well, just in conclusion, I was just thinking about a few points. I'll maybe say a few things, and you can say a few closing thoughts to just sum up, the heart of this article and the research and all that you're finding. But certainly what I would want to say to you, worship leaders, as you're listening, is it's worth it to take time before you're preparing to lead a song, to think through every song, and to come to the table with some level of intelligence of, I know what the range of this song is. I know what the tempo of the song is. I know what the setting is, how many people there are. I know the nature of the band, all of the different factors that kind of play in. You could even write that all down in your little worship leading, planning sheet or something like that. And then know your own vocal range. I mean, it's as simple as go to the piano and just start going la la la. I can't sing lower than that, and go right up high. Find out what your range is. I would encourage you to have the boldness. There's no shame in singing songs that are in the sweet spot of your vocal range. Certainly, you'd want to try to expand that vocal range, and maybe you want to take music lessons or vocal lessons or things like that. But when you're on Sunday, you've got what you've got. So step up to the table, understand the nature of what's going on musically. Hopefully you can even use the key range finder or tools like that. And then, the ultimate goal for me, and then I'll let you say a few things, Daniel, is beyond leading people into the presence of God, which is, of course, so important, but also that I want you to be on stage and feel that sense of confidence that I can do this. I have the gift and I have the voice and I love this song and I'm so excited to be here and lead these people in this song. I want you to have that kind of like fire in your belly when you get up on stage with your people on a Sunday morning. So that's the ultimate goal of the KeyFinder and all the songs and PraiseCharts and all, and all that we're doing is we're just trying to like point you in that direction so that you can have that confidence and boldness and to create a beautiful experience. So Daniel, what are your closing thoughts? I'm so interested to know.
Yeah, well, look, from the article, there's a whole lot of things that we haven't even touched on, which is fine because they're things that people can explore and discuss. It was interesting to me that more than half the songs were downloaded in their recorded key,
Yes.
and I know that as a training resource, that to be able to play along with the original recording or sing along with the original recording, it just makes it easy.
Yes.
And I know there are ways of pitch shifting, and I mentioned that they can sound pretty strange sometimes when you do that, but sort of being able to sing along or rehearse along with a recording is handy. So maybe there's if people who are recording songs are listening to this, then maybe there needs to be some multiple recorded options. Maybe not just the one that sounds good on the radio, but also maybe the one that sounds good when you've only got a piano and a voice. And I know that some artists have done that sort of thing when it's just them and a guitar or a piano going, hey, look, this song still works.
Yes.
And I think that's great. I think it was fascinating to me just that we have such large range songs now. And, there are a few smaller range songs, Trust in God, Graves into Gardens, only have a major sixth. That's pretty tiny. And that's so rare now. Again, if we were to go back 40 years or so, we'd find a lot more songs within that octave kind of range. But now you do have songs in a larger range. And I think on the one hand, that creates the opportunity for more dynamic, like you can move from those more intimate tones to something that's really powerful and strident and something that people can shout out and becomes, a real kind of proclamation. There's actually something, quite, as from a concert experience or, the big environment, there's something quite releasing about being able to scream at the top of your lungs. So, I think there's interesting places for all that. But I guess as worship leaders, know that there is a range. There are songs that are only a major sixth. There are songs that are 2 octaves. And if you want to work with those songs that have a smaller range so that you've got perhaps more options for keys, then those are there. And with that in mind, too many thoughts. The thing that I didn't actually cover at all in this article is the fact that we don't, in any of the contexts that I'm in, we don't sing just one song. Yes. We're singing multiple songs, and that means that there is some kind of transition between each song. And keys matter in those transitions. Because some musical shifts sound far more natural than others, and if you're shifting from a D flat major song to a C major song, it's a bit of a clunk of the gears in that process, and often it doesn't take much to to smooth those out, and to make those transitions better. And I think for me as a worship leader, transitions are perhaps one of the greatest keys for worship really working or not working as well as it could, because that's where you lose people, or that's where you can lift people into that next place, and keep that flow happening. So there's just a few thoughts.
I know, it's like so many, and really the whole goal of this conversation was just to put some life, to put another dimension to this article, which I so appreciate that the article, well, it does give great insight, and it encourages the conversation, and then it also encourages even more questions, and ultimately this is how we learn and we grow as people. And I hope that people will be inspired as they listen to this conversation and take in the article, and then go and taking in the very resources that are online, the whole key range finder that we were talking about, just as a practical expression of this, totally free. There's no cost to that. You don't have to log in, we're not getting anything from you. It's just really to help you have the kind of resource that you need. So Daniel, I hope that this relationship can continue, and the next time you want to dive into the data about any aspect of what's going on in PraiseCharts, you know that you can come to us and we'll give you the real-time best active current data that we have, and we can just learn more about what the church is singing, and an answer to that question, what on earth are we singing? That's what we've been asking, and it's a beautiful question.
Ryan, I just thank you so much. Thanks for facilitating that. I mean, my world is in the research of contemporary worship and in those songs, and both, from as a worship leader, as a pastor, as a musician, but also as a scholar. And so there's lots of people who can't get into the kind of data analysis that I can do with the resources and the training and that I've had. And so I'm so pleased to be able to contribute something that I really hope is helpful to the local church around the world. And thank you for the part that you play.
You're very, very welcome. Well, just to remember that you can pick up this article and read it. We'll put a link to it in the show notes to this very interview that we're having. And I think there might even be a link to this video from that article. So it's a big circle. Somehow you'll find this and can continue taking in more of this great insight. So thank you, Daniel. This is Ryan Dahl and Daniel Thornton coming to you from PraiseCharts and Worship Leader Magazine. And I hope that you'll have a great Sunday. Here's to another great week.